The 2024 Republican primary is heating up, and with last week's announcement, after months of speculation from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in officially entering the race, it is about time that we look at some of the poll numbers and some of the current sentiment within the country to try to see where this race will ultimately end up. First, we will be talking about a candidate that really does not need any kind of introduction, former President Donald Trump. I'm not really going to sit here and talk about some of the accomplishments and some of the things he's done, especially while he was president. There's been a million and a half things related to him. So we'll be moving pretty quickly onto Ron DeSantis, who is currently polling in second behind Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis won Florida in his 2022 reelection campaign by 15%, and in a state where historically there have been pretty close elections that raised a lot of eyebrows. He helped flip, I believe it was three U.S. House seats in the different Florida districts throughout the state, obviously, that some were seen as contested, some were definitely not seen as super contested races. Ultimately, obviously, none of them were safe. However, many didn't really see that much of a flip, especially not 15 points at the statewide level. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Ron DeSantis at one point was polling a lot higher than he is currently. Um, and there is potential he could go back up, obviously. Polling is an inexact science, and at any point, any candidate can say something great that really rallies their base and gains them a lot of supporters, or they could say something horrible and it completely derails their campaign. So, obviously, the date I'm recording this is the 30th of May. So, if anything happens after that, that completely changes up the campaign, obviously, that would greatly influence what would happen between these candidates. Now, I will say there are definitely other candidates, obviously, besides the former president and the Florida governor. So I'll be talking about a few of them now. Nikki Haley's currently polling in third. Um, Former governor of South Carolina, and she's largely seen as a moderate Republican. She was also the UN ambassador at one point under President Trump. So she definitely could be. Obviously, she's in the race. So polling at third, she has every candidate in the race. Technically has a chance, but I think she could get somewhat of a boost when you see a little bit more consolidation of the polls, like if Sununu chooses not to run or Aja Hutchinson drops out. So I could see her getting somewhat of a boost, and ultimately she could. Obviously, as long as you're in the race, you could win the nomination. Realistically, though, there's only one nomination. They can't have four or five different presidential candidates, nor would they want to. Mike Pence is currently polling in third. Um, Obviously, former VP. So ultimately, Joe Biden was a former VP, and that was his highest office before he served. So if you go down that line of thinking, my issue with Mike Pence is I don't really see a lane for him. The true, MAGA supporters will be probably still upset at him that he didn't try to send the electoral college votes in certain states back. Um, so I can't imagine that they would break for him a ton, whereas the moderate Republican voters have other choices that I think are probably more, appealing options to the different bases within the Republican Party. So I truly don't think that Mike Pence will announce, and I think it's almost impossible that he would actually win the nomination. unless there is some serious changes in the layout of the campaign. And there are a few other smaller candidates that I will talk about now. Uh, Vivek, um, I don't want to pronounce his name wrong, Ramawamsi, uh, used to be he founded Roivant Sciences, which was a pharmaceutical company for drug development. He supports different asset management, Roivant Social Event Ventures, Strive Asset Management. Um, both of these things are he is seen by some as a big crusader against um, ESG, like greater environmental, social, and governance activities within businesses themselves. So, some of his positions, um, he favors raising the voting age to 25 unless they're enlisted in the military, work as a first responder, or if they can pass a civics test, which isn't a horrible idea depending what the civics test is. It's very similar to voter ID in my opinion, where you could, in theory, it sounds like a great idea, but it's all about how high the bar is. If you have to get 100% on 50 questions on a civics test to be able to outvote, that would be pretty unconstitutional in my opinion. Whereas if it's a more basic thing and you have to get closer to 70%, maybe there's an argument to be had. So you would really just need to dig into the specifics more. Currently polling below him is Tim Scott, uh, current senator from the state of South Carolina. Um, he's also seen as a more moderate Republican, although he does align with Donald Trump on quite a few issues. In fact, whenever he announced, Donald Trump actually wished him good luck, which was very weird. I don't think I've ever seen a candidate wish another rival good luck whenever they announced. But regardless, um, currently he is sitting in sixth place in the polls, fifth of announced candidates. Um, so, truly is yet to be seen whether his campaign can reach its full potential. I know he had a pretty big ad buy that was going out in some of the early primary states. So, we'll have to wait and see if that actually makes an impact. So, looking at the national polling average first, Donald Trump is currently in the lead with 53.2%, which I will make very clear. At no point in the 2016 nomination process did Donald Trump get above 50%. And he won the nomination. So, this is a very good sign for the Trump campaign, obviously. If you're just going to get a straight up majority of Republican voters in a system that is many states are winner take all, definitely get his reelection campaign looking better and better. DeSantis is currently sitting at second, as I mentioned. He's sitting at 22.4%, meaning the gap between him and Trump is over 30 points currently. To put that in perspective, Nikki Haley is polling in third at 4.4%. You can add up Trump, DeSantis, Haley. Obviously, you can add up the rest of the Republican field, and you still would not get to the number that Trump is at. However, if you add DeSantis and Haley, if somehow they formed a complete coalition, they still would be trailing Donald Trump by around 25 points. So that's pretty grim. If your second best, if your second highest polling candidate is that far behind in a crowded primary with Vivek, in currently of the announced candidates, he's currently in fourth with 2.6. Tim Scott with 1.6 is after that. Then you get into some of the candidates that haven't announced: Youngkin, Sununu, Christie, what have you. So ultimately, that's a very bad sign if you are hoping that Donald Trump will not get the nomination. So let's take a look at some of the early states. Currently, I have the Iowa Republican caucus up. So, in the Real Clear Politics average at the site that I used for my data, Trump is sitting at 47.7%, DeSantis 25.3, Haley 5.3, Pence 3.7, and no one else is above 2.5. So that's a solid lead of 20 some points for former President Trump. And actually, if you look at the latest poll from Emerson, Trump is at 62% to DeSantis's 20. So if that is a trend and that continues, the Iowa caucus might be a blowout. It's certainly shaping up that way right now. So ultimately, that could be like not even competitive. And next, let's take a look at New Hampshire. The current polling data is 41% Trump, 23% DeSantis. The big asterisk that I would put on New Hampshire right now is Sununu is polling at 14.3%. Where those voters would fall between all of the other candidates if Sununu does not decide to run is very hard to tell. Ultimately, you would figure they're not all voting for Trump or all voting for DeSantis. There are probably some sort of mix. But even then, if you look at the latest poll, Trump is at 39%, which is below where he would be in the average. DeSantis is at 18%. Sununu's at 17%. So DeSantis is close to becoming third in the New Hampshire primary. Ultimately, I don't think Sununu will run, but this shows how largely unpopular Ron DeSantis appears to be, or at least comparatively unpopular to former President Trump. And there was a poll that was finished on the 23rd. It was the first poll from West Virginia in the primary season. Trump had 54%, DeSantis is 9%. A absolute if that would actually happen during a primary, that margin between the top two candidates, 45 points, would be historic. So what this adds up to as the race is taking shape, it spells pretty clearly that Trump is the heavy favorite right now, which may be expected, which may not be expected. Ultimately, who knows how the race will shape out. But currently, it's not even, if you asked me if I had to bet on who would get the nomination, I would take Trump every day and twice on Sunday. So thank you for watching this video. I hope it was informative. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And stay tuned for more videos. Thank you for watching.